my task is really just an introductory presentation about the theoretical aspect of HOV. And the side question to that is, can it really help cure Metro Manila's traffic bottleneck? After all, MMDA, I think a few months ago, tried to introduce HOV on EDSA. Of course, after a few attempts, trial, they backed off and withdrew their proposal. But I understand it's still at the back of their mind to introduce it as soon as they get the firepower or the willingness to do it against public objection. Next. The fundamental principle for HOV or ride sharing is really two. No? You want to have more throughput per lane of road. As illustrated in these two slides, if you have all people riding a single bus, you have less traffic, only one vehicle. The same number of people, if they take cars, you immediately occupy the entire road space. This is because, you know, there are maybe 1 or 2 passengers per car, or you have 60 or more per bus. The other concept is really that you have to bring more people riding the buses rather than just shifting or having more people riding a single car. In Metro Manila, I think the average is about 2 persons per trip per car. So if you have more passengers, there will be less cars. Less cars, of course, faster flow of traffic, because there is another underlying principle in engineering that policymakers often ignore. There is a capacity limit to a road. On an expressway, there is no side friction, no intersection. You can have a maximum 2,000 passenger cars per hour per lane. The faster you go, the less number, so that's the optimal number you can go through. In cities, of course, because of the stop and go, you'll be lucky to have 1,000 cars per hour per lane. This is the slide that illustrates the capacity of different modes, which shows that if you take a car, you will have only about 2,000, and then if you take a train, you will have more than 100,000, a suburban or a subway, metro. This slide was actually taken from a paper or a web of the fanatics of BRT. They think, that's why they think that BRT has higher capacity than LRT. They claim that LRT is only capable of 22,000 passengers per lane per hour, which is of course wrong, because the LRT1 on Top Avenida has been designed to handle 36,000 passengers per hour per direction. And that capacity has been there since 2010. The HOV concept in the US actually talk only of private car, but in the Philippines, you should ask, should we include motorcycle sharing, which I think Grab promotes, and or Angkas. Next. HOV is a word that originated in the US. They like to take this idea when they applied and experimented in Northern Virginia, and they found that it does improve traffic. Of course, the corporations in the US also supported that scheme by introducing corporate bond pools. It works in the US because, as you can see, you have urban freeways, uninterrupted flow. And 80% of those vehicles using the freeway are private cars. Very few buses. In fact, the first time I was in LA, it took me 30 minutes just waiting for a bus to pass by. While in Manila, every few seconds you will have a bus or jeepney passing in front of you. Next. The closest example of HOV application to Manila happened in Jakarta. This was introduced more than 20 years ago on that central business district of Jakarta known as the Golden Triangle. Because in that triangle are located the government offices and the Makati of Jakarta. I have a opportunity long time ago to work in Jakarta in their Ministry of Transportation. So I'm familiar with their street where they applied this so-called Tiga Dalam Satu, which is Satu Dua Tiga is 1, 2, 3. Very similar to Tagalog, the numbering of Jakarta. Then they scrap it in 2016 and traffic worsened. It provided an opportunity for researchers of Harvard and MIT to analyze the effect of before and after because they have data coming from TMBS companies, I think, like Uber and Grab. And then they have a data afterwards. So they concluded that actually there was a 70 or 80% improvement in, or worsening of traffic when the policy was lifted. Next slide. There are unintended consequences when you apply HOV, and primarily the example is in Jakarta. It gave rise to a home cottage industry called jockeys for hire, meaning there are poor people that will wait before the gate for a ride. So they will ride with you, then you qualify with 3-in-1 as you go enter the cordon line. Then afterwards, they'll get down, they'll go back again and take another ride. So it's a good home industry that provides income to poor income people. In the US, of course, they started manufacturing dummy passengers that look like a real one, and they put them beside their seat to look like a real passenger. So this happened, the law of unintended consequences. For example, yung UBBRP or number coding in the Manila has been there for the last, how many? 15, 20 years? It has led to actually more cars on the road than less cars. That is the unintended consequences. But ayaw maniwala ng mga policymakers doon. So they still insist on applying a formula that does not work. Next. Just a comparison, it works in the US. It has become, many other states followed suit. In Europe, they were not so hot about HOV. Only very few actually adopted HOV in Europe because, after all, they have a very good public transport system, buses and rails, unlike the US, which are more car dependent. In Australia and New Zealand, they applied it not because of traffic congestion, but they want to save on energy and reduce carbon emission. So the objective is different. Indonesia, of course, it's similar to the Philippines. There is a poor public transport because of traffic congestion. They had good results, but then they didn't like the passengers for hire, so they canceled it. In Metro Manila, the question is, are the factor conditions ideal for applying HOV? Next slide. So these are some of the questions we should be asking if we want to implement HOV in Metro Manila. The average car occupancy in Manila is 1.7. That's based on data. Cars account for 32% of person trips per day, but nearly 80% of road space. Public transport provides 68% share of daily commuting trips. Very, very high compared to the US situation. And we don't have the urban freeways that the US cities are known for. But the biggest part that prevents the effectiveness of HOV in Manila is actually our legal system. It is not envisaged under the Traffic and Transport and Traffic Law, RA 4136. The Land Transport Franchising Regulatory Board insists that if you share a ride and that rider gives you some share of the cost, it requires a franchise. So how can you do that? Of course, there was a time that Filipinos were more generous. They like to do bayanihan and share a ride. But apparently, but the cases of hold-up crimes emerged, so they refused to do so anymore. So those are some of the things that happened. The one that has high usage, of course, universities like Ateneo, now UP, used to be in the olden days when I was student here, there were only 5 cars, I think, in the College of Engineering. Now I think every other student ride the car. So you can see that Diliman is pretty much congested. So if you apply HOV in UP, you'll probably get the same results as what happened in Ateneo. Next. So let me now go to the conclusion of my presentation. Why we want to do this presentation. We cannot wait for light at the end of the tunnel. We have to light it up. Put a fire, not by money, but with knowledge. So with this, I think we can call on the next speaker to talk. Unfortunately, I think, okay, the speaker from Ateneo cannot make it. Let me just give you a summary of what I perceive the Ateneo did or happened. I live in front of Ateneo, so I know what has happened when they applied the car pooling. They issue stickers for cars to go in. And the guy from Ateneo once told me, for every 2,000 students, they had 2,000 students, they issued 1,000 stickers. That's how many. Because some students will come in with an escort security. Ganun lang. And they applied it, I think, in the below, including junior high and below. And many parents complained. What they do is, you cannot issue you a sticker to Ateneo unless 2 other parents or students share a ride with you. And as a resident in the area, I noticed a sudden reduction in the volume of vehicles entering Ateneo in the morning. Of course, they also added a bus shuttle from 2 locations where you can drop students, and I think the bus bring you to Ateneo. I think one is in Trinoma, ba? And the other is in Marikina somewhere. Yeah. So they were doing it, so I said, well, this works, so why not try it in other universities? It is the best example of HOV that you can see working around.